It's time for the Kim Hammer Show, where you'll learn how your state government affects you, your family, and community. Here's Kim Hammer.
Good Saturday morning. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and it's just a great weekend that we're in the midst of. And we are in the midst of the holidays, and the show today is kind of designed around helping people through the holidays because while it is a joyous time and a happy time, we also have to realize that it can be a challenging time for some folks, and we want to be mindful of meeting their needs. So we have a very special program lined up today. I have joining me Dr. Kent Corso. He's been on the program before, clinical psychologist. He's also, and Dr. Corso, you can straighten me out if I get the terminology wrong, a suicidalist who specializes in dealing with suicide. I've got Patty Gibson with an organization, which, disclaimer, I'm on the board, called ABHIN, and she is a physician who works in the area of helping people as well, and I think you'll be excited to hear about what we do as an organization. And then I'll also have Angela Capagna. Close?
Very close.
Okay, all right. Licensed clinical social worker, certified trauma professional, and does face-to-face therapy in Conway. And then also in studio is Michael Springer, who's an Iraqi war veteran. He was in the Army infantry. He is senior vice commander of the VFW post in Beebe, peer recovery specialist, also volunteers for the Lone Oak Sheriff's Department in addiction recovery, and an assist trainer for the We Are 22. And of course, Bella is in the studio as well. That would be Angela's daughter. Just where an 11-year-old wants to be on Saturday is sitting in a radio studio. So we'll try to make this a pleasant experience for you, okay? So we've got a really packed program today, and what we're going to do on the Kim Hammer Show today, I'm going to utilize the expertise of everybody that's on the show today. And maybe this is a time of the year that's difficult for you because you've maybe experienced in the past year loss of a loved one. Maybe you're going through a difficult time, especially with the economy and everything that's going on in our nation right now. Perhaps you're having a difficult time. One of the things we wanted to do is approach it in a positive way and give you access to some resources and just some things that may help you as we pull from the collective wisdom that's on the show today. And also, I want to let you know that next week on the show from Church Resources, we are going to have a gentleman on that is going to be talking about surviving the holidays. Church Resources is the entity that puts out Grief Share. If any of you all have ever been through that program, it's offered by churches. It is an excellent program. In fact, we just did the program Surviving the Holidays in order to help equip people deal with the difficulty of the holidays. So they'll be on the Kim Hammer Show next week for a portion of it. Right now, though, let's get into our program. And let me just start off, first of all, Kent, Dr. Corso, if you will, tell a little bit about yourself, anything that I left out, just to give people a comfort level about your expertise in the field that you work in.
Sure. So thanks for having me. It's great to be here and to assist with this show today. I'm a suicidologist and a clinical psychologist. I'm also a military veteran. I was in the Air Force and OEF veteran. And largely for the last 15, 20 years, what I've been doing is helping communities, both here in the States, but also abroad, manage suicide. It's a problem that is near and dear to my heart. When I served in the military, we had more deaths by suicide than we did by enemy fire. So I very quickly had to not only get up to speed with it, but to learn how we can bend the curve. So that's mostly my background. Most recently, I've been doing a lot of work with actually Customs and Border Protection, largest law enforcement agency in the world, and they are really struggling as well with this problem. Law enforcement, military veterans, they tend to be at higher risk, and the holidays are, as you said, not an easy time for many people. So I will stop there, except to say that one of the things that I found myself doing most in the last several years is training. So you mentioned Michael's assist training. He's an assist trainer. Generally, I come in after people have assist and build on that foundation. So if you are a mental health provider, a physician, a nurse, someone in the medical community, that's how I sort of joined the party.
Well, let me ask you, and Patty, then I'm going to come to you because when we talk about training, that's part of your area of expertise. What assist training or an assist trainer, what are they specifically trained to do?
So I'd love to hear Michael's input as well, but from my perspective, the purpose of assist training is to mobilize the community to help itself. So it's the old idea that if you see something, say something. Back in the 70s and 80s, people had neighborhood watch programs right after 9/11. We would have, and obviously neighborhood watches, if you see someone committing a crime, say something. And after 9/11, we had lots of people saying, well, hey, if you see a suspicious package, say something. And so likewise, this is called a gatekeeper suicide prevention approach. And what it means is that we are all gatekeepers. We all have to maintain some situational awareness of the people around us, both in our community, our family, where we work. And if someone appears to be struggling, these sorts of programs teach us how to ask the difficult questions. Are you thinking of ending your life? Are you thinking of killing yourself?
Okay. And when it comes to stigma, I know that Angela's going to talk about that in just a second. And let me ask you, Michael, let me defer to you as far as the assist trainer aspect. You're an assist trainer. What would you add to what Dr. Corso said as far as what you do and what you're trained to do and how you do it?
I feel like he was absolutely spot on. The main thing we want to do is for everyone to understand, to ask the questions of suicide. It's okay to ask that and break the stigma of that. And also to help identify everyone around you can be able to partake in this and helping people with mental health and suicidal problems.
Okay. Patty, let me come to you. Talk about ABHIM
Sure.
for a minute and, some of the training that we do and how it ties into the conversation that Dr. Corso started us off with.
Sure. It seems that we're all more connected than we thought we were. ABHIN or ABIN, Arkansas Behavioral Health Integration Network, is a nonprofit that we started a couple of years ago. I was working as a psychiatrist in the VA, and the VA had an initiative around 2007 to 2009, and they sent me and other social workers, psychologists to work in the primary care clinics rather than staying in the mental health clinics. And the purpose of this was to be able to give everyone more access to people who had mental health and behavioral health expertise. And in addition to increasing the access to mental health specialists, which is important because of the stigma involved in seeking mental health, it also the purpose for putting behavioral health personnel in primary care is to increase the training for the primary care physicians and the clinical staff in primary care clinics. So the VA and the military have been doing this for several years, going back to the early 2000s. And ABIN, we formed after an initiative in primary care to increase the access to behavioral health and primary care across the state and across the country. So what we do now, the purpose for ABIN is to increase integrated care in medical settings. That way we can increase the access to mental health professionals and also in primary care, and also to increase the skill of and confidence and competence of primary care physicians and staff. Some of the trainings that we are providing through ABIN, Dr. Kent Corso has been providing some suicide assessment and management training through ABIN, and we're providing that in specific clinics, and we have monthly webinars, and our website, www.abinnetwork.org, has some of Dr. Corso's trainings online. We also have some federal grants for opioid use disorder and substance use disorder. And as a part of that, we have some peer recovery specialists with the State Drug Director's Office, APART. Peer recovery specialists are a huge part of increasing access to all sorts of mental and emotional care from mental issues, psychiatric issues, as well as substance use issues. So I am excited to meet Michael on this call. And this is an area that ABN is also working in, is trying to increase the access and support for people who are struggling with any type of substance use, and especially to intervene with the opioid epidemic and decrease the overdoses. So appreciate the opportunity to be part of this team today.
All right, and I tell you what I want to do. I want to hit the pause button, and then we'll bring Angela into the conversation. But as because some of y'all are watching Facebook Live, which we appreciate very much, and also if you're listening here on 101.1 FM, The Answer, we thank you for tuning in every Saturday to the Kim Hammer Show. Let me get the websites out, because while we're having this conversation, some of y'all may want to go up there and check out the websites. For example, I'm on the ABHIN website, which, as she mentioned a while ago, is www.abhinetwork, ABHIN Network. Don't double the N. It's the N is shared between us and the word network. So .org, www.abhinetwork.org. You can go to the website. Got a really cool looking website, by the way. All right, Dr. Corso, you got a website or anything you want to refer people to?
Yes, sir. So it's NCR, that's November Charlie Romeo, ncrbehavioralhealth.com. It's sort of all one phrase, ncrbehavioralhealth.com.
All right. Angela, let's bring you into the conversation. You work in the field. You're out there on the front line working with folks. And so tell people, A, if you got a website you want to share about your clinic, feel free to do that. And then tell folks a little bit about yourself and about your background and how you got interested in this field.
Well, I didn't know that before this morning, but apparently there's a lot of veterans in this conversation. So I am a Marine Corps veteran. I served for 9 years. I then later became a licensed clinical social worker, and I've had about 15 years in that practice. In any area that I've worked in this field, because LCSW is working in a lot of diverse environments, suicide has always been a major concern, and also a symptom, shall I say, and you guys can correct me if I'm using some wrong terminology, but something very hard to treat. It can be quite complicated. And I specialize in trauma care, so I'm a certified clinical trauma professionalist. And unfortunately, a lot of my clients who have suffered from trauma also suffer from suicidality. So I wanted to make sure that I was providing the best services and supports to my clients. So I've been doing that in my own private practice called Face-to-Face Therapy. It's in Conway, Arkansas, and the website is face2face therapy.com. So you can learn more about myself and my staff there. I also have been volunteering with We Are the 22, or I was volunteering with We Are the 22, and through that I became certified in assist. And I won't say even though, as a therapist, I think sometimes we do some of these trainings like assist that are kind of designed for more paraprofessionals. I was actually completely impressed and learned so much that I've been able to implement that into my daily practice. I do find that, especially living in Arkansas and in rural areas, and I'm from rural Arkansas, there is huge stigma around mental health and a huge gap in psychoeducation in those communities. So recently I've become very passionate about going out and providing education on not just suicide, but just trauma. What is trauma? What is mental health? What are the interventions? Making sure that people can ask for help and that they know there is a treatment and a recovery from that and how to access that. That's why I just started my own 501c3 called Breaking Stigma. And I'm super excited to meet you guys. And I think we can do a lot of great work together. And that's when I brought in and connected with Michael Springer to help me start that program, because I found that what works in my practice is they come to me, I do the trauma intervention, I can do the psychotherapy, all effective, but having the clinical social worker background, we love to look at supports that can be accessed in our environment, in our community. So my ideal treatment intervention when someone comes into my office is, yes, I'm going to do the psychotherapy. Yes, I'm going to do, we do brain spotting, we do EMDR, various different evidence-based psychotherapies. But I also love the concept and know that my clients need the support sometimes of more of that day-to-day in the community. So that's where I've been working with Michael and some other peer recovery specialists to help me with that, connecting them to what supports are in their community, helping them build some skills-based things. And I'm just very passionate about it, and I want to provide more of those services to Arkansas, especially rural Arkansas. And I guess that's, am I missing anything? I'm looking at Michael.
So let me ask y'all this: why is suicide? And Dr. Corso, let me come to you first with it. Doctor, why is suicide on the uptick? When you think, and I know we kind of compartmentalize, maybe that's not the right word, but you think about the issues of active military veterans, law enforcement, and others that are in the public service, public protection, and then you think about just the citizens as a whole. Is there a common thread that is between all the groups, all the populations, or am I missing it? That it seems as though suicide and people's inability to handle the pressures of society today are on the uptick.
That's a great question. I wish we had the answer. I actually wish we had 8 hours to discuss it, because there's a lot of research we could address that would probably put your audience to sleep. But to answer your question, Senator Hammer, I think if we look across all those populations, the common threads or common denominators are the fact that there is just still stigma. People do not feel comfortable saying to a friend, a family member, hey, I'm thinking of killing myself. That it's, whether it's their faith and that it's sort of against their religion, their faith, or whether it's just the idea that, for example, men are terrible help seekers. That the research does not lie. We have decades and decades of research that men don't seek help easily. And so that's part of the problem as well, is barriers that come down to gender. But if we try to think about how come, to your point, how come it hasn't changed in recent years, the garden variety citizen has to be interested in helping this problem. Something that both Michael and Angela mentioned is getting people to be more comfortable asking the question, are you thinking of killing yourself? Some people think that if we ask a friend or someone at the grocery store, hey, maybe the person's crying, and you choose to sort of lean in and say, hey, are you okay? Is there anything I can do? Are you thinking of killing yourself? Some people think that asking that kind of a pointed question might make someone suicidal, but that's not how it works. You're not going to give someone an idea they haven't already thought of. One other thing I'd throw out there, one other detail, is that the moment when someone chooses to kill themselves, if they have access to a firearm and that is their chosen way, 24% of people make the decision within 5 minutes, and then they pull the trigger. 70% of people with firearms make the decision in 1 hour. So part of the solution, particularly when we're talking about veterans and law enforcement, has to do with firearm safety, getting people to practice more safe firearm storage and handling. And certainly if there's someone in your house who's struggling, someone in your family, make sure that you're putting an extra set of eyes and safety measures on your firearm, because it just happens so quickly.
And just to be clear, because people in Arkansas know me, you're not proposing doing away with the Second Amendment or anything of that nature. You're just saying build in some safeguards if there's a history or a potential there, correct?
Absolutely right. Yeah, I am not saying that we should in any way threaten or detract or remove the Second Amendment. What we're saying is that responsible firearm owners take certain steps every single day to be safe. And so it's a matter of, so for example, when we talk to firearm owners and say, hey, if you're having a huge block party and maybe there are some other folks who are coming, cousins, relatives who you don't know, is that one of those circumstances you might lock up your firearms? Most firearm owners would say, yeah, sure, because I don't know who's going to show up. Well, it's sort of putting this idea in that same category, that if there's someone in your house struggling, especially if it's you, that's just another one of those times where we have to just increase the security and safety of that firearm.
Go ahead. Can I add on to that? Because I want to go back up to something you first said. The stigma is a huge problem. And then because of that stigma, people struggling with those thoughts tend to isolate themselves, which is not good. Then there's also the problem in Arkansas, and I don't know the statistics like Dr. Corso does, but I know what I see in Arkansas. Then there's the other part of lack of access to professional care. It's a big problem in Arkansas. Third, I think when people get in those situations and they feel like they can't talk to anyone, they're isolated, they can become very impulsive, like Dr. Corso said, where, you're making that decision in 1 minute, 5 minutes, whatever. So with the gun situation, I'm obviously I like guns too. It's every client probably I have has a gun. It's Arkansas, rural Arkansas. But if you can just put in a barrier to where that weapon is more difficult to access, say put it in a safe or whatever, you can kind of subside that 1 to 5 minute decision making, right?
And it could be, it could be weapons, but it could be the method of choice, whether that would be a knife or pills or
very much so.
Whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Michael, go ahead.
I think you had something to add on.
I was going to touch base with like what Dr. Corso said. It's how important of raising awareness and breaking the stigma of this really is for people and family and friends to recognize what someone's going through and then develop safety plans from there on out of what their situation may be. That's why it's so crucial for us to break the stigma, to be able to be comfortable to ask these questions, to recognize a friend. With We Are 22, we since this organization began, we've answered over 500 calls for suicidal veterans in the state of Arkansas. And those are the same things we're seeing. As soon as we find out and they have a plan, we immediately go into a safe plan, call a family member, let's get these guns put up out of the sight so we get something safety going on for them. So breaking the stigma is seriously crucial right now.
All right, I got about 2 minutes before I got to take a break, but here's a couple things I want to ask about when we come back. What's going through a person's mind in that 1 to 5 minutes? Number one, we're gonna talk about stigma and what are some signs of stigma where people are actually stigmatizing, for lack of a better term, individuals that they would preclude, and maybe that also involves like people that historically have threatened suicide, but have never came through with it. That's, I think that's one thing that, lay people deal with is, they're always talking about doing it. They're not going to do it. And there's a stigma that would be placed on them as far as, habitual offenders of the threat of possibility, but never going through with it. I'd like to talk about that when we come back. On the training side, I want to get Patty to talk about the training because to the lack of resources issue, one of the things we do have to do is get more people trained. And I think that includes the medical providers that you would think that they automatically know. Yeah,
100%.
You think that they automatically assume, or we automatically assume that they know or recognize, or through whatever medical check-in procedure they identify that. But I think we're finding that may not be the case. And Patty, I want you to talk about that when we come back in. What are we doing to make the blanket bigger over Arkansas as far as providing people that are trained. And then the other thing is going to be, and y'all better all help me remember this because I'm not writing it down. The other thing is, what about the layperson? How do you get the layperson trained? If we're going to go after the medical provider, we're going to go after the WR22 and the veterans, but there's, if there's a gap of the person just on the street, as was mentioned a while ago, you saw somebody, crying in the line. It's not people's natural tendency to want to stick their nose in somebody else's business. How can the general society be involved in helping? Because if that'll help remove the stigma, that's what we want to do. All right. You're listening to the Kim Hammer Show here on 101.1 FM, The Answer. My guests today are Dr. Kent Corso, Dr. Patty Gibson, licensed clinical psychologist Angela
Campagna.
I'm going to have it by the end of Campagna. And then also got Michael Springer, who's an Iraqi war veteran. And sitting over here very quietly is Bella. She doesn't want to say anything, but that's Angela's daughter. Thank you for being here on the Kim Hammer Show. You're the highlight of the moment. All right, we'll be back after the break to the Kim Hammer Show. Come back, join us. Welcome back to the Kim Hammer Show here at 101.1 FM Answer. Thanks for joining us live on Facebook, and we appreciate you being here today. Conversation is talking about suicide awareness and prevention. We're in the holiday season. Can be difficult for folks. And let me ask y'all, what is it about the holiday season, or is there an uptick in suicides during the holiday season? Yes or no? I don't know, so I'm asking the professionals.
I think that's the Dr. Corso. He seems like he's the one that's got the statistics going on there. I'm going to call you out.
Nerd. For better or for worse, Angela. I'm a super nerd. I do have the statistics.
You're on the spot now, brother. Okay.
Uh-oh. So we actually don't see increased suicides, but we do see an increase in all the precursor risks for suicide. So things like grief, anxiety, depression. Sometimes people will increase alcohol use during that time. And, hey, if you like alcohol, that's fantastic. But if you're using that alcohol to cope with some negative feelings, that's not so helpful. We also may see people relapse if they had, let's say, recovered from alcohol or drug use. So it's all those risk factors for suicide that we see an increase on, but not necessarily the suicides themselves during the holidays.
So what time of the year is there a traditional higher time of the year than other as far as the suicide rate, or is it just the trend?
Sir, we've seen certain studies show that different times of the year, but over the last 50 years, taking that approach to try to figure this out just hasn't proved to be fruitful. So, to be honest, we can talk about spikes during times of the years, but when you look over a 50-year period, it all evens out. And
so, are we on the uptick as far as the suicide rate increasing?
We are. We see about 50,000 suicides per year in the United States. And we do know, back to the firearm issue, and please, I want to make sure your listeners aren't misunderstanding my intentions here. The states where guns are more popular, we just see higher suicide rates year after year, and that's not a coincidence, and that doesn't mean guns are bad. What it means is that whatever people happen to have access to is what they tend to use when they become suicidal.
So talk about the 1 to 5 minute time frame. What is going on in somebody's mind in that 1 to 5 minute time frame?
So this comes from research. Oh, go ahead, Angela. Go ahead, Angela.
No, I just had some thoughts on that of what I've seen when people usually come to me at that point. My clients usually come to me, and I know them very well, so they're telling me these thoughts and feelings, and then those are like the precursors that I know to ask are you thinking about suicide, right? And hopelessness, being overwhelmed, um, different crisis, and especially during the holidays, what I'm seeing right now in Conway, anyway, almost every therapy practice is totally booked up, like not able to take more clients right now. And what people are struggling with during this time is unrealistic expectations of what they should be doing right now, not being able to set good boundaries with obligations, family functions, just overwhelmed. They're getting out of their normal routine where they might normally go to the gym every day or go to the office every day, but instead they've totally dropped out the exercise and now they're having, drinks with family. So I think that plays a huge factor, but definitely a feeling of hopelessness is what I see a lot, that they are in a space and society has them in a space where they feel there's no way out. And because of this stigma, they feel that there's no one that they can talk to about this situation.
So, Michael, let me ask you from a person who has served, in the war setting and dealing with folks in the world that you touch, what are some of the perceptions that individuals have when it comes to having a stigma placed on them? What are they thinking as far as what they think other people are thinking about them?
You come about as far as veterans and suicidal.
We can talk on veterans, yeah. But I also want to expand that in a little bit to everybody else.
I
But
have
let's
something
start
about
off
that
with
too,
the
yeah.
veterans.
Do you want me to go
Yeah,
first?
you can go ahead.
Okay, so I think that people feel like they're a failure, that if they've digressed to this way of thinking, there's a lot of shame around suicide. And I think that that's one reason even healthcare providers sometimes don't want to talk about it. And to me, in my mind, shame is one of the most damaging emotions that we can experience. So I think it's shame, a feeling of failure, like you're letting someone down. Hesitant to even bring this topic up, but sometimes people have very strong religious beliefs that is not an acceptable thought or feeling or emotion. And I think sometimes, and I hate this term, but I think it needs to be talked about. People often tell suicidal people that they're being selfish or they're taking the easy way out. And that's not true, but that really, really isolates the individual who's having these thoughts. In my mind, and the doctors may disagree with me because I feel like you know more details about this. To me, that's a symptom. To me, a suicidal thought is a symptom of some internal mental health struggle that you're dealing with. Does that make sense?
All right, Patty and Dr. Corso, y'all want to chime in on that one?
I defer to Dr. Gibson first. Go ahead, ma'am.
We may have lost her. Patty, are you on?
We may have lost her.
All right, go ahead, Dr. Corso.
So Angela, I think you hit the nail on the head there. If someone shares with a loved one, they allow themselves to be vulnerable and share that they're thinking of ending their life. The last thing that other person should do is place a value judgment on them. That just further alienates the person and kind of pushes them away. So even if we think it's selfish, even there's that old phrase that it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem, even if that's what we believe as the support system, as the friend, the family member, the community member, that's not something that is helpful to say to the person who's struggling because it's not supportive. It doesn't welcome them sharing more. And so it's just so important to, if someone's willing to share that, to just listen. That's all we really have to do. We don't have to be mini mental health therapists or mini doctors. Crash course doctors. We just have to be willing to kind of, what I would say is, be a good person and just listen to the person who's struggling and then try to get them to a medical professional.
Well, let me interject a spiritual perspective on this, because I'm a minister of 42 years and actually have a degree in pastoral counseling as my bachelor's degree. When it comes to the subject of shame, I do think shame serves a healthy purpose, but if applied in the wrong setting, it can be destructive as well. If a person is trying to come forward that has suicidal tendencies, it doesn't do me any good, doesn't do that person any good if I shame them for having those suicidal tendencies, because all that does, in my opinion, is just suppress them back in deeper and puts a lid on it, and something's going to blow at some, time out of our control. So, with regards to things like dealing with suicide, I think that putting a shameful perspective on it is not anything that God would want. I can't find that it's supported anywhere in God's word that that's what, he would support. Now, if you're out there committing a sinful activity, yeah, you need shame. In fact, I wish our society did understand the benefit of shame more when it came to correcting sinful actions that are destructive and outside the framework of God's word. But in this setting, I don't see that it benefits. For example, Michael, if you're having suicidal tendencies and you said something that made me think that you were having those and I shamed you for having them, all I've done is pushed you away. And God's not in the business of pushing people away. He's in the business of, I will draw all men unto me.
Absolutely.
And that's one thing we need to, distinguish. With regards to suicide being treated as a sin, I don't subscribe to that line of thought. To what I subscribe to is that suicide is a issue that people have, just like other people have other issues, and we've got to look at God's word. We got to incorporate the practical application of skilled people such as yourselves in order to address the problem and get it corrected. And then that way we restore the person to a healthy mindset where they can be productive to their family, to themselves, and live life the way God wants them to live. As a pastor, I'm invoking those thoughts into the conversation because I think we've got to have the spiritual component involved in this. You mentioned hopelessness a while ago. There's no greater hope that's given than by God, that he's given to man through his son, Jesus Christ, who died on the cross of Calvary to pay our sin debt and to give us the gift of eternal life so that we can know when we get done living on this earth and all the crap we got to put up with, we get to go to heaven when we die. And that to me is what gives people genuine hope for now and into eternity. All right, that's the sermon for the morning, but thank you all for your tolerance on that. So
No, thank you for sharing that, because I know you. I listen to a lot of your things you put on Facebook, Senator, and I know that you push that. But I just hope that other pastors, even in rural communities, because that's where I really worry about my Arkansas people, because that's my people. I'm from very rural Arkansas, and I hope that we can reach out to them so they can have that education and understanding like you do.
And we got Patty back. And Patty, let me ask you this question because it kind of segues into rural Arkansas, because I know that's one area that we're trying to make a push into. What are we doing to provide education to healthcare providers of all types? Because as we mentioned a while ago, even the healthcare providers may not feel comfortable dealing with the subject. If you don't feel comfortable dealing with it, you don't ever bring it up, and you don't really want it brought up because then you feel awkward, or maybe you're afraid you're going to give the wrong advice and push somebody over the edge.
Or a liability. I hate to say that, but I feel that some clinicians feel that they don't know how to adequately address this issue, and therefore they're afraid to, because they may not have those skills.
Right.
Well, that's exactly why we have begun providing training in suicide assessment and management for primary care physicians and their staff, and that Dr. Corso has been part of that. The things you've been talking about speak to the complexity of the thoughts that someone has that they don't want to keep living anymore. And it has spiritual and emotional, but also physical components. Mm-hmm. And that's why we want to encourage people to talk to their primary care doctor, nurse practitioner, or whoever they see for their primary care. because, as Angela has spoken, there's a lack of access to mental health professionals, not only in Arkansas, but across the country. And the statistics do show that 45% of the people who actually take their life have seen their primary care doctor in the month prior to taking their life. Sometimes they don't tell their doctor that they're actually having these thoughts of hopelessness, that they don't see any choice of continuing to live because they have so much either physical problems, emotional problems, or just overwhelming stress. And so they need to go ahead and speak up to their primary care physician, their staff, and let them know how hopeless that they're feeling. We know that stigma and our tradition in healthcare is that often people don't talk to their primary care physician about their emotional and mental issues, but the primary care doctor cannot read minds, so you have to tell them how hopeless that you're feeling, and primary care physicians and staff will try to get you help. So if you are feeling this hopeless, please speak up to your primary care provider. And we encourage primary care providers as well as therapists who may be working in primary care clinics that if you're not feeling comfortable, that you don't know exactly what questions to ask, or as Angela pointed out, that you're feeling liable, then ABIN is there to try to help bridge that gap and provide training. And people can get training today. Go on our website. We have 1 hour, 2 hour, and 6 hours of training to help primary care teams feel comfortable, and also contact us. But it is something that's changing. We want to bring more support to people in their primary care practices. And because this is not just a psychiatric problem. This is a normal thought that often people have. And if they can get some help and find out that it's not that they really want to kill themselves, they're just feeling hopeless and don't see any other choices. But there is training, and the training on our website is free. So feel free to look at our website or contact us, and we will set you up with more training. So,
Doctor, can I ask really fast about that? Is that an online training?
The modules are there. It's recorded modules from trainings that we've provided before. So that gives you a baseline. And if you need more interaction or more support, then reach out to us, and we'll be glad to continue to provide that support in addition to the viewing the online modules that we have.
Now, that's not just, correct me if I'm wrong, that's not just for healthcare providers. Anybody can go up to the website and view that, correct? I mean, the general public could do that, or We Are 22, or anybody has access to that.
Yes. And that particular training, Dr. Corso has said, it is kind of the next step to the assist training. So the two fit together really well. And as a physician, I have found this to be extremely effective and makes sense scientifically and medically, and that we can get help to more people in more locations by enabling the primary care staff to be able to feel comfortable with this type of assessment and management.
Okay. And that's free of charge to everybody. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. But, and folks need to realize, just, sometimes you hear free and you automatically assume, well, it's not worth anything, or they'd be charging for it. The reality is, on certain subjects in certain area, which, ABHAN is funded by grants, the reality is that there are certain subjects that you need to get as much information, good information out there as you can, in order to help equip the masses to be able to identify and to deal with this. But at the same time, I want to caution you, if you go either to like the ABHAN website or others, that doesn't make you a professional. One of the things you want to do is, if you identify somebody that needs help, you want to get them in the hands of the professional. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a critical component, that if the PCP is going to be the doorway, or, the multiple doors opportunity for people to recognize people that need help, channel them into places where they can get good help. So let me ask you that. Let me ask you this. because, you know, if somebody's listening to the show today, we're talking about the topic, we're talking about all the nuts and bolts to it and everything. But the bottom line is, if somebody feels that they need help, what should they do? Where do we send them? What do we do with them? So as to make sure that they get access to good help.
I want to bring something up really quick is for the veterans in Arkansas, you can call We Are the 22, 1-855-932-7384, and someone will answer that call 24/7, and a responder will be dispatched to you wherever you are, even in rural Arkansas, in the middle of nowhere where you are completely isolated. Someone will respond to you. And then there is the suicide hotline, 1-800-273-8255. And I'm sure that,
And there's also
yeah,
there's also a text line. You can text to 741-741 and call 911, but also go to your primary care doctor and ask them for help as well.
this is also my concern in this rural area is I struggle with this so much, and now I'm asking advice from you two doctors. I often ask my clients that come in who've been struggling with this, and they haven't had access to a primary care doctor sometimes in years, just because of lack of access in these rural communities, lack of insurance, lack of education. So I'm super glad that you two are helping promote this and let the doctors know in the area that they can reach out to their clients too or their patients. Does that make any sense?
Yes, it does. And it speaks to a lot of solutions are increased awareness
Mm-hmm.
so that we can all, just the relationships we built on this call today, and we want to reach out to anyone else whether they are someone struggling with suicide or someone in a helping profession or someone in a family who need help, that we all do need to reach out and help each other, increase awareness, and all of us increase our knowledge through various trainings. So appreciate you bringing that up as well, Angela.
All right, I've got 5 minutes left, and I tell you what I want to do. I want to focus on dealing with the stigma, because if we don't break down the walls of stigma, then people that need help are going to feel the barrier of not being able to reach out to it. So all of y'all take about 1 minute and share your ideas of what we need to do to be breaking down the stigma. And let's start, Angela.
Well, I think like what these two doctors are doing is exactly what we need to keep doing more of. And that's why I've created the nonprofit of Breaking Stigma, is I want to start to go out to more rural areas and not just work with healthcare providers, but the schools, the police, first responders, churches, and giving them some of that same education and awareness and talk about it. And I do more on social media, and I thank you, Senator Hammer, for doing this. I think we have to keep talking about it. We have to keep educating. And I think that that's our best direction to break stigma.
Dr. Corso?
So the two ways I would suggest we break stigma, one is let's just look at this from a personal perspective. If you feel like you need help, don't make it more than it needs to be. This isn't, we used to say like, oh, the strong get help and the weak suffer in silence. And that's really nonsense. The reality is the best reason to get help is because whatever you're experiencing is not fun. It's not enjoyable. And it gets in the way of the things you value in life, whether that's living a life of happiness, whether it's a life of service, whether it's a life of independence and achievement, whether it gets in the way of your family relationships, your job performance. Those are the reasons to get help. So for anyone who's thought about getting help but sort of backed away from it, this isn't about strong and weak. This is about, do you want to live the life that you'd like to live? So that's stigma, breaking down stigma for help seeking. And then as far as the other angle from stigma, which I would say is for helping others who are struggling, is to just do it. Whether you follow the Nike phrase, just do it or not, the idea is that it feels awkward to think about asking someone if they're thinking of killing themselves. But once you do it one time, you'll never go back. You will always do it in the future. And so what I would say is take a risk, ask someone one time, be part of the solution, and you'll see that once you get to that initial awkwardness, it is such an important part of our role as community members.
Very good. Michael, you got 30 seconds.
I would just say someone who's suffered with these symptoms of being suicidal coming back from combat, it's just raising awareness, being in there, being the person you needed when I was at my worst is my goal. And if anybody can normalize this, be comfortable asking someone, just being a human being, being there for somebody, help somebody. They just need somebody to listen to or whatever the problem may be for that person. So that's definitely, we need to break the stigma. Be normal about it.
And thank you for your service, by the way, each of you.
Thank you.
And Dr. Corso, I thank you too. Patty, you got 30
Yeah,
seconds.
I would add in the other place for us to decrease stigma is to look at our healthcare system and our insurance payers, that we have an artificial separation of the heart, mind, and body, and that we need to be treating the whole person. And our training system, we need to be sure that we train all healthcare providers to take care of the whole person, including a person's mind and heart, so that people can get help in any setting for how they're feeling and how they're thinking. So we need to decrease the stigma in the healthcare system and healthcare providers and provide more training and education in that, instead of this separation that we have of physical health and mental health.
All right. Very good. I'm running out of time. I thank you each for being on the Kim Hammer Show. You can go up to my website, thekimhammershow.com, thekimhammershow.com. We'll get these phone numbers posted up there as far as resources. We'll pull the team back together again and have further conversations about this, because I've got some other ideas, but I'm running out of time. Hope you've had a great Thanksgiving this past week. And as you go into the rest of the holiday season, always remember this: there's help out there, but you got to be willing to ask, and don't build a wall to where they don't want to ask. Hope you have a great day.